Is it safe to come out?
Hi, I didn't see you there. Well, it's been real, it's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun, right? Being out of school. I miss you guys. Hey, we're going to talk about Nepal, though, and Bhutan, and some of these other little areas all around South Asia. So I'm going to try and get you some of this stuff. It's been kind of difficult trying to, navigate assignments and getting it to me and all. Email it to me. It's the best way, guys. A lot of y'all been emailing stuff. I'm going to be putting stuff on RenWeb, assignments, and LMS. LMS is really awesome. If you haven't figured it out yet, try and get in there. Try and figure it out. It's really cool. It's really easy to use. And that's what I'm going to be doing for the remainder of this time that we are out. But let's talk about Nepal and Bhutan. So first of all, both these countries are way high up in the mountains, right? They are Himalayan countries. They're some of the highest places on Earth. Actually, the highest place on Earth is in Nepal. It's called Mount Everest. You've heard of it, right? It's the high mountain, right? It's the biggest one in the world. That's in Nepal. They also have a crazy flag, and you can see this flag here. Their flag is like two pennants. Most flags, obviously, we know are like rectangles. Not Nepal. They're not about that. In Nepal, they're about triangles. So the heck with rectangles. Triangles are better, they say. It's got like a moon and a star, or sun and moon and star. I don't know what that's about. But Nepal is cool. It's basically like the whole country's like this. The more north you go in the country, it's like a staircase leading up to the highest mountains in the world, the rooftop of the world, as it's called. Actually, Tibet's called that, but it's right there on the border between them and Tibet. And Nepal is way, way high up, right? And then the other country in the mountains is Bhutan. What another cool flag. It's a rectangle, but it's got a dragon on it, so that's cool. I like flags with dragons. Actually, this is because Bhutan is known as the land of the Thunder Dragon. That's what Bhutan's nickname is. I think that's what Bhutan means. Land of the Thunder Dragon. So they've got a dragon here on their flag. Both of these countries are kingdoms. They have kings. It's a monarchy system. It's a constitutional monarchy. But unlike maybe some of the other constitutional monarchies we talked about, like Great Britain or somewhere like that you think of, the kings actually have much more power in both of these countries. They're not just a figurehead. They actually do have some political power. They do have some authority over the way things work. And Bhutan is one of the most isolated countries in the world. They don't allow just anybody to come to Bhutan. They don't allow just any business to open up in Bhutan. We've said, I think the B class we're talking about, they have this gross domestic happiness. Instead of gross domestic product, they are more concerned with the happiness of their people than the money of their people. And we'll talk about why that is. Number one thing in Bhutan is their culture and their religion. Their culture is an ancient culture. They want to preserve that culture and that heritage. And their religion is Buddhism. And Buddhism preaches reject all things that are material, reject all things that are impermanent. All things are impermanent, and don't get caught up in all the want and need and desire. Right? Be content with your suffering. Right? Now, I don't mean that Bhutan is a miserable place. That's actually just part of Buddhism. The idea that suffering is all around us. We'll talk about Buddhism. It's an interesting Eastern philosophy, very different than our own Christianity. But here's some pictures of, and I know you can't really see it very good, but they're all mountains. When you think about Nepal and Bhutan, very, very mountainous, high up in the mountains, isolated. These ancient kingdoms that you'll find all throughout these mountains. I think it's called the Tiger's Nest. The Tiger's Nest is this ancient Buddhist temple built on the side of a mountain, which is just crazy. How'd they do that? How'd they build that on the side of a mountain? So, we're going to get into it now here. Let me use this. This will actually help me better. I hope everyone is staying nice and healthy and washing their hands. You need to wash your hands. You don't be sneezing on people. Don't be licking doorknobs, okay? Don't be licking tables, desks, metal, anything. Don't lick each other. It's gross. But So we're going to get right into it here. Chapter 22 is where we are. And here we go. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Let's go, computer. There we are. So, the first two we're going to talk about is again, Bhutan and Nepal. Now, this section 3, actually has 4 countries, 2 of which are in the mountains, 2 of which are in the Indian Ocean. I'll do a separate video about Sri Lanka and the Maldives. We'll do this one just about these mountain kingdoms, okay? But here are your terms to know, which most of you have already defined. It is a dzong. A dzong is a temple. It actually is a fortress temple in Bhutan. Their language derives from this. Dzonga is their language, and it is a center of art and learning and religion, and it's very important to the culture of Bhutan. An atoll, which is more for the island countries, it is a ring-shaped island, low-lying, usually made of coral. And then a lagoon is the area in the middle of an atoll, which is the kind of safer area protected by the atoll, where the winds and all that doesn't necessarily affect it. It's like calmer waters inside of there. Creature from the Black Lagoon, right? So lagoons, we'll talk about that in the Indian Ocean republics. So let's get to here, and boom, Nepal. So Nepal's land forms a stairway to the world's highest mountains, the Himalaya, right? If you were able to look at Nepal from the side, from the south, it would go up like an escalator, a staircase, right? Down in the south, it's more subtropical. They've got farming going on there, and up north, it's desolate tundra. Very, very high mountains. You'll find the Sherpa people, and they live at some of the highest places in the world, and they're the ones who do all the mountain climbing. So Nepal is home to Mount Everest. There you go. Mount Everest is the highest peak in the world, and it is a huge tourist destination. Lots of people climb Mount Everest, and they get the Sherpa people to help take them up the mountain. Can you believe that there are lines that go up Mount Everest in the busy season? Lines like Disney World. Gosh, you can't escape lines. But that happens in Mount Everest as well. It's very dangerous. It's the most dangerous lines in the world, right? Very, very dangerous. You might as well be on the surface of the moon if something goes wrong, because no one can help you on Mount Everest. If something goes wrong, they're probably going to just keep going because they can't really get you down. Helicopters can't fly up there and get you, and the mountain's like this, so what are they going to do? Scary. But Nepal has fertile valleys and a humid subtropical climate in the south. So very similar to here in the southern parts of Nepal, humid subtropical. It's, like I said, it's about like here. The farming mostly takes place in the south. The north has a highland climate, so think like Colorado, think like, Montana, somewhere like that. And Nepal's economy depends on farming. Okay, it depends on farming. That's their biggest thing is farming. So, if you want to get these right now, what I would suggest is hit pause, write these down if you want to, and then we will go forward. So, awesome. All right, so moving on. So Nepal carries unlimited trade with the outside world. They don't trade a bunch with everybody. They kind of also want to preserve a little bit of themselves, but mostly it's to preserve their economy. They're very reliant on, the outsiders to give them stuff, but they also like to make sure that they maintain their own identity. Same thing with Bhutan. They have this idea that they want to preserve their heritage, preserve their culture. They grow things like herbs, jute, rice, and wheat, and they export them to India. But they don't usually buy a lot of stuff from outside countries. They sell to a lot of outside countries. They don't necessarily want to buy because they want people in their country to be buying their products. So they're good with selling. They're not really a team player, doesn't sound like, right? They're trading with India, but they don't want to trade back. It's not really fun. In return, though, Nepal imports things that they can't produce. Okay, so they do buy things they can't necessarily produce themselves, like gasoline. They don't have oil reserves. They don't have gasoline refineries necessarily. Fertilizer, machinery. These are things they need that they don't produce, so they have to go and get these things. Okay, and that's what they import. Clothing and carpets, though, make up the country's most valuable exports. So they do make clothing. They have factories to produce clothing. They do produce carpet there. They grow that jute, which, of course, that's that carpet backing, like burlap material. And they do produce that in Nepal. So carpets are made there. Sorry, I'll go back. If you want to screenshot that, or if you want to pause this and write those down, do that now. All right, moving on. So Nepal is a parliamentary democracy ruled by a prime minister, and the king selects the prime minister. So this is the different thing. The king doesn't actually have physical power himself, but he has the power to put someone in charge, right? So he's the one who actually selects who will be the ruler of the country. So in a way, he is kind of in charge of the country, right? If we wanted to be kind of a conspiracy theorist about this, if there was a king that wanted a certain person in power because that person would listen to whatever he said, well, there you go. But that's not necessarily the case in Nepal, but it could be, right? This has happened before. So it is a parliamentary democracy. They do vote on their parliament, their representatives, but they don't get to vote on their leader. The king picks the leader. The capital and largest city is Kathmandu. Kathmandu is the main kind of economic center of the country, the main political center of the country. It's the largest city in the country, and it is pronounced Kathmandu. If you've seen Doctor Strange, that's where he goes. It's Kathmandu. Reference for you. What religion is practiced in Nepal? It's mostly, that's right, Hinduism and Buddhism are the two main religions there. So Nepal is officially Hindu, but Buddhism is practiced as well. The founder of Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama, was born in Kathmandu region about 563 BC. So Buddhism started in Nepal. Officially, the country is Hindu because the ruling family, the king, is Hindu. So officially, the country is Hindu. But Buddhism is also a major religion here. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, was born here, and he lived his life there. The Buddha is a term. It's a title. Buddha means enlightened one. So like Christ, Christ means like Messiah, right? Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah. It's not his last name. The Buddha is the enlightened one. It's a term, it's a title for Siddhartha Gautama, who is the founder of Buddhism. Now, important thing to know, Buddhists do not worship Buddha, okay? Buddha is not a god. He is not their cosmic entity that they think created everything. He is their main teacher. He's the person who Buddhism is founded around, but Buddhists are not necessarily what we call theistic. Theistic means believe in a god. Some Buddhists believe in a creation narrative similar to Hindus. Some Buddhists believe in their own kind of idea of how everything works. There are other ideas out there by Buddhists, but Buddhists don't have a specific teaching about God, which makes it interesting as a religion because we tend to think in the West, well, a religion is about God, right? Religions are about God, but religions are about, what God do you believe in? Not so much in Buddhism. Buddhism is not necessarily that interested in a God or a creation story, but more about a idea of how to live your life and how certain principles in life apply and what to do to improve your current situation. Not necessarily about theism, right? Gods. So, Siddhartha Gautama. One of his major things was impermanence and suffering. Life is suffering. The only way to get rid of some of that suffering is to limit the amount of material objects and limit the amount of needs that you have, to accept your situation and to try and alleviate suffering in the world. And it's way more than that as well, but that's kind of a broad thing about Buddhism, and that's also probably why it's in Asia it fits in with a lot of those other religions that we'll talk about to come. It also has a lot to do with Hinduism. Or in common with Hinduism. The Himalaya are the major landform, though, in Bhutan. So moving on to Bhutan, Bhutan's also a mountainous country. It's kind of surrounded by mountains. It's an isolated kingdom, and for years and years and years, it was left pretty much by itself. Many outside countries could not get to Bhutan. Many traders, there's only specific ways to get there through these mountain passes. So for a long time, it's isolated. A nickname of Bhutan also is the Hidden Holy Land. Because of all the Buddhist temples, because of all the Buddhist monks and scholarship, it's very much a religious country, and it's called the Hidden Holy Land because it's hidden and it's religious, right? More than 90% of Bhutan's people are subsistence farmers, meaning that they farm for themselves and for their families to eat, not necessarily as a commercial venture, like to make money, but they do most of the time sell whatever they have left over to make some money. But the primary purpose of subsistence farming, as we've said a million times this year, is to grow food for you, right? To eat. They live in the fertile mountain valleys. They grow certain crops like cardamom, oranges, rice, corn, and potatoes. So those things are grown in Bhutan, which is odd because you would think in an area that's so high up, how do they grow oranges, right? I don't know, it's weird, right? Oranges should only grow in tropical climates, but they grow in Bhutan. Interesting. People also herd cattle and yaks. A yak is like a big cow that's hairy, and it's a little different than a cow. They're very common in Asia. The yaks, where you can make yak cheese and yak butter and fermented yak milk. That's something they drink. That's weird. I've never had that. I don't think I'd want that. Sounds gross. But it's a type of oxen, which is, again, a type of cow. So Bhutan has built hydroelectric plants. So they're not all, just because they're kind of isolated does not mean they don't have technology. They kind of reject certain technology. I think TVs only came to Bhutan in the 90s. The internet has only recently come to Bhutan, and that's out of their own choice. They don't want it. That when the country as a whole decides that they kind of are wanting to go in a certain direction, the country moves in that direction. But they're kind of slow to develop on purpose. They have hydroelectric plants though that export electricity. India has a huge electricity need, right? Because they have 1.3 billion people. So Bhutan helps to promote or give electricity to India because India has such a need, and Bhutan has many, many rivers because they're up in the mountains. So lots of rivers, lots of waterways. Create some dams, make some power, send it to India, right? Tourism is a new industry. It's very limited. They only let in a certain amount of people per year to Bhutan. If you were wanting to go to Bhutan right now, you probably wouldn't be able to get in. Well, you probably wouldn't be able to get on a plane because the way things are right now. But you probably wouldn't be able to get in. You'd be probably put on a waiting list, and when a spot opens up or when they're going to schedule you to come, they would allow you to come. But it's not super easy to just jump on a plane and go to Bhutan. You have to have permission. You have to have certain paperwork and permission and all this stuff to get to Bhutan because they limit that. They don't want all this outside exposure into their country, right? You won't find fast food restaurants in Bhutan. You won't find a single stoplight in Bhutan. You won't find a lot of internet or cell phone service in the country. And all of you are like, oh, it sounds like an awful place. Well, people in Bhutan are actually some of the happiest people in the world. Can you believe that? Most people remain deeply loyal to Buddhism. Most people are very, very Buddhist. So it's all about limiting your consumerism to make yourself happier. Instead of always being like more, right? Buy, sell. I need the next big thing, man. I need it, right? That's not what they're all about in Bhutan. They're saying that need of you to always have the next thing, to always want, is actually making you more unhappy, right? So Buddhism is very deeply part of Bhutan. Buddhist centers of prayer and study are called dzongs, like we said. Buddhist temples are not always called dzongs throughout the world. It's really only in Bhutan you'll find them called dzongs, or in the Himalaya. And again, the language of Bhutan is Dzonga, which is about zongs. It's a DZ, so it's like this zong sound. Yeah, I don't speak Dzonga, but I wish I did. So in other places, Buddhist temples are called pagodas. Sometimes they're called wats. Sometimes they're called shrines. There's different names for them. It's not like, mosques and synagogues and churches are always, that's what they're called. But there's Buddhism has different terms for their temples. So they have shaped the country. These zongs have shaped the country's art and culture. So a lot of learning, a lot of educational influence, a lot of art influence. All this really centers around the zongs, around these temples, which actually zong means fortress, which is strange. So Bhutan began to move towards democracy in 1998. Their king gave up some of his power for representative government. The king shares power with elected lawmakers, and the capital is Thimphu. And Thimphu is the largest city, main economic and cultural center of the country. It's not a very big city. It's not a very, I mean, you would think a national capital would be this huge thing. If you look at it, though, it's really not very big. It's not a very populated city. Most people in Bhutan live in rural areas. What hinders Bhutan's developing economy? Anybody? That's right. The mountains slow progress, right? They're surrounded by mountains. The only way to get things in and out of the country is by plane or to drive on these very windy, very steep roads. So they're not being able to really get a lot of stuff into the country. It's landlocked, which we know landlocked countries always suffer economically because of their isolation or because of their neighbors, kind of controlling what they can get in and get out. Not a lot of roads, no railroads in the country that I know of. Very limited airports. Railroads and boats are the best ways to get goods into a country. Not an option in Bhutan, right? Not an option. So here is a Bhutanese girl, very happy. I think it's on the cover of your book, or at least on the cover of the chapter. Very happy, bright colored hat. Some of the happiest people in the world, believe it or not, are in Bhutan. So I hope that answers some questions about Bhutan and Nepal. The next video will be about Sri Lanka and the Maldives. Look forward to watching that. And make sure you watch this. And if you have questions, just ask me. If you're not understanding an assignment, just ask me. Again, this stuff will be good because we will have quizzes and tests over all this. I hope you have a great day. Miss you guys. Stay safe out there. Love you. See ya.